If you had to tell one story that summed up who you were as a person, who you are for sure as a person, tell that story.
When I wake up every morning, I try and be more efficient than I was yesterday, and I try and be less of a piece of shit than I was yesterday. So if I can get answers to those two questions, I come out a better person at the end of it.
You can't put people in buckets, right? We all are a culmination of our experiences in our past and stuff like that, but we all have a brain, which kind of makes it hard for us to put anyone in a bucket because everyone is vastly different.
Welcome to No Universal Answers to the Universe, a video podcast and interview series with Taylor Hall and Kenneth Gibbons. Tonight is our first roundtable episode, and Kenneth, if you could kind of walk us through what the format's going to be.
Yeah, so what we're going to be talking about today is music as it relates to the community, the effects that music has on the community, and then we're going to turn that around and talk about how events that are going on in the world and in the community get translated into, new music. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it off to each of our guests. I'm going to start with Melissa, and then I'm going to go to Kim and Ruben. They're just going to introduce themselves briefly and kind of tell us what their background in music is. So go ahead and take it from the top, Melissa.
Okay, hi, I'm Melissa Greer. I started in music as a little kid. I was in All-State Honor Chorus in elementary school. I started band in 6th grade and did it until, I still sometimes do stuff with band locally in our community. And I marched in high school.
Awesome.
So that's me.
All right, go ahead.
All right. My name is Kim Haywood. I started playing drums around like the age of 3 or 4. I really started digging into it when I turned 12. That's when I got into middle school band and stuff like that. That's when I really started to take it serious. Grew up, did band, and became the section leader my senior year of high school. And then I went to Georgia Southern and I played in the marching band there. I also, produce music. I've been working just with music technology. I actually have a music technology minor. And I've also done WGI, which is like Winter Guard International for percussion sector with the Atlanta Quest organization and the open class group called Q2. And now I'm on staff there teaching. I teach drums now too. There's a lot of stuff because I got a lot of music stuff that I got going on. But yeah, music has just been one of my primary passions, and eventually I want to make it my primary career.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. All right, go ahead, Ruben.
All right, so I kind of got my start in music growing up in church. Kind of went through different small churches, and they always needed somebody to play the drums. And so I started on a drum set, and then I got an opportunity to learn a little bit of keyboard. And then later on, actually, one of my friends actually moved to Grovetown, Dino. He introduced me to actually rapping. And so I actually started recording around 13 or 14. And then just been recording ever since then. I got my master's in sound design, so I've been recording music and audio stuff for a long time. And I just recently got hired on at Classic Studios in Augusta, Georgia. And so I'm a recording engineer now.
Awesome. Well, thank all of you for joining. My background in music is that I listen to it. That's pretty much it. I'm excited to have you guys on just so that we can kind of talk through this, because it's something that's been, I guess, really interesting to me. Really, I haven't dug into it much up until when Childish Gambino dropped "This Is America," and then you start looking really into how it correlates to the community, how it correlates to what's going on in the world, and you start to really deep dive into lyrics from 20, 30 years ago. And Taylor will actually talk about from the 60s and the protests, when the protests were going on and stuff like that, how music was really involved in pushing that too. So, I mean, it's been around obviously since the beginning of time, and it's been used to share stories, to share viewpoints and things like that. So I'm just going to open it up to discussion. Feel free to chime in whenever. Just kind of trying to make this like a big open round table. But I want to kind of start with each of you guys' opinions on how music affects the community. And then later on, we'll get into how the community affects music. But how do you guys think that music actually affects the community? And we can start at the top again, or anybody feel free to chime in.
Can we anchor that with each person pick a song in like the past 10 to 20 years that you feel like has made a significant statement? Because it doesn't happen at a regular interval. It kind of happens as civics and politics move forward. So I'm curious what everyone kind of sees as the songs that stand out.
So I've been listening to podcasts primarily instead of music recently. So I'm not super up on like modern music. Like I listen to it here and there when my podcasts don't download like they're supposed to. But I definitely think that music influences the community. I guess I'm coming at it from a different perspective. Like in our community, we only have 3 high schools. So the rivalries are pretty intense between those 3 high schools. And then we tried to bring bands together. So Eastside and Newton are the original 2 for our county. I went to Eastside, and Newton is across town. So we're a core style band and Newton is a show style band. And so there's always been like a huge rivalry there. But we started when I was in high school planning, when we had the Eastside Newton game, which was always big. The cops are always there to make sure fights don't happen. We brought the bands together and we practiced for like 2 weeks beforehand together and did a show together to kind of be like united. And so they're marching show style and we're marching core style on the field, playing a song and like kind of uniting us instead of where normally we would be divided. And I think that unity is something that music brings to a community.
Awesome. Like, how did it work out well?
Yeah, they still do it. So it's been like a decade
Okay.
now since we started doing that. And they also plan, like there's a Newton County honor band now where people, so that's not for marching, that's just in general. So people from all 3 high schools, their band directors select them and they come together and they do a big old concert on the town square. And I really like music because it does encourage like unity like that. Like you can do music to get, like, it's a great thing to do together with people and to bring people together.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely agree.
That's one of the things is like you always hear about, like I don't want to say you always hear about, but like you hear about certain things that like break out at events like that, and them not going well. So it's really nice to hear that an event like that took off and it's sticking and it actually brings the community together. So that's a great example, like we're talking about, of how music can affect the community and in a way that brings them together. You know,
well, and usually that game happens sometime around like near September 11th, so it's always also like a commemorative show for our for all of that going on.
Right. Okay. Did Taylor, when you brought this up, did you have a song in mind?
It's going to get a little bit too far into the trenches a little bit too quickly, but the thing that I wanted to bring to this was Jesus Walks to Jesus is King.
Ooh.
How religion in Kanye's music is seen between his first album and his most recent album. Because I just feel like there's a lot to unpack there. People are saying that Kanye's found God. I'm like, no, publicly, he's always had God. Because a lot of people, I mean, for music and for celebrity, you're going to take values and stuff back when people look up to role models. So his statements on religion then and now, how does that affect the community that he's reaching out to?
Yeah. I get what you're saying about getting into the trenches really quick.
I might not be able to comment on that one because I haven't listened to any of that.
I listen to Jesus Walks, but I heard a little bit of Jesus is King, and it's like, like it's cool, I guess, but it's not the Kanye that I'm used to.
Very different.
A very different Kanye. I remember when Jesus Walks came out, he actually got nominated for like Gospel Song of the Year or something for a BET award or something like that back in the day. And I was just like, wow, like Kanye West, a gospel artist. But like he's actually been going through so many different things. Like if you listen to like the drive and the energy of his like albums before, like his mother passed away, that's some different sound. And then like after that, it's like, oh man, he was going a little wild with it. But then like later on, now it's like, okay, he's kind of calmed down a little bit, but he's still very like, we're just unsure about who this Kanye is. We don't know like how what he's trying to do and what exactly he's trying to tell the world.
Yeah, it's like I remember, excuse me, I remember him being on stage face to face with 50 Cent, and like you knew what he was about to bring to the table. There was like a surety that you knew what he was going to bring, and then it's like as of late, when you hear that Kanye is about to drop something, I just get a little nervous.
Right.
It's like the surety is out the window, and it's more or less like, all right, what Kanye is going to be recording in the studio?
Because
So,
like a few months ago, we got Poopity Scoop. so now we just got like King. I'm just like, bro, like just last week you were talking about some Poopity Scoop, bro. I don't even know.
that spontaneity can be good, and it's good that he is allowed to do that, because a lot of artists like have to stay in their same like genre or their same vein. And I think that being able to have that spontaneity and just explore whatever he wants to explore is good. And like you guys have been saying, it keeps their fans on their toes. Like you have no idea what's coming. And because music kind of like it all sounds like gets to where it sounds the same in pop culture. So being able to switch it up and like do something new, that's incredibly freeing for people.
One thing he is doing is definitely keeping people on their toes. Like to me, like the money that's coming to his pocket from all of this, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Right.
So the money that's coming to his pocket for all of this jumping back and forth and stuff like that, this man is a genius. And he's just loading his bank account full of crazy stuff and just saying crazy stuff.
Well, now we've got Kanye 2024, so.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like, we got trolling Kanye, we got, Kanye that actually makes sense, and then, just...
You got Kanye in a MAGA hat.
We have no idea what Kanye we're going to get every day.
Right. I almost feel like he doesn't know what Kanye is going to wake up each morning.
Honestly.
Sometimes I feel like he might need some medication to figure that out himself. But to what Melissa was saying though, like with it being with the spontaneity and then trying to change it up, she's absolutely right. I mean, how many artists have we seen who created something? I'm gonna throw it back. All right, Soulja Boy. He created something that was new, that was hot. And then he tried to change it and go into a different lane where he was a more serious rapper. Nobody listens to Soulja Boy at all. Absolutely was not his year this year. Wasn't his year last year as much as he thought it was. And like that's just one example. I mean, how many musicians like live and die by that, right? You have something that comes out, is popular, and when we're talking about tying it back to the community, it's like they find that one niche that really hits what's going on at that point in time. But the community is always changing. Politics are always changing. What we're thinking is always changing. So if they try to keep on doing that, they typically wear out anyways. But sometimes they try and change it too drastically, and then they're done.
Mm-hmm.
You about to say something, Taylor?
It's to abstract from both what Kim and Melissa were saying, take it away from Kanye himself. When an artist who is so unpredictable and so volatile suddenly has that change of heart where they're saying God is love, God is life, we need to like pursue that. That's kind of what I wanted everyone's opinion on, of how do you as a listener, how do people as a community react to that? how do you kind of take a serious message from someone who is unpredictable?
I say it's hard because in his point of view, or I guess from my point of view of him, it's not what I expected to come from him necessarily. So like if it came from, and I'm not gonna be able to think of somebody off the top of my head, but if like a message like that came from somebody,
Like if John Legend dropped a gospel,
right,
like,
it would make so much more sense in my mind. I would level with that on a much different, like from a much different perspective, because I'd be like, oh, John Legend's dropping this. This is at least adjacent to his current lane. I would listen to that because John Legend is a ridiculously good singer, but it's when it comes from somebody who you're expecting to have a wholly different experience from, it almost makes the message not hit home as well.
Yeah.
I know Ruben was about to say something.
Yeah, so my perspective as a Kanye fan specifically is a little different, just because I was in 7th grade when I first heard of Kanye. So I kind of like grew up with him being like this musical genius soon as he came out all the way up until now. And so listening to Jesus Walks versus Jesus is King, and because me and one of my friends was just talking about this, I feel like he's not putting the time and the effort into the music no more. And like when I heard Jesus is King, I was like, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's polished enough. Like, because when he first talked about the album, it was first called Yandi, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, he's going a little religious. Let's see where this goes. And then he decided to change to Jesus is King. I was like, okay, if it sounds like a bunch of ultra light beams,
Mm-hmm.
then it's going to be an absolutely great album. But it sounded more of like what we got from Ye, his like most recent album. And it didn't seem to me like it was like enough effort put in that, enough time and energy. Because I can feel like Life of Pablo and My Dark Twisted Fantasy,
yeah,
those albums, like he took his time, he put a whole bunch of collaboration with other people, and you can hear it and feel it in the music. And it just like trying to put this message, especially with the religious aspect, you need more of that time and that feeling with it. And I just didn't get that from that. So I listened to that album twice.
I feel like even Yeezus had more time and effort put into it than this one.
Yeah.
You know, Yeezus it sounded good. Some songs were like, okay. Some songs were like, but you know, it's like we were getting that edgy type of Kanye at that time. You know what I'm saying? That was that weird Kanye.
Yeah.
You know, so but yeah, I totally get what you're saying on that.
I would say too, I'm gonna transition a little bit here. We're talking about how music affects community. Like this might be an area where like the community has affected the music, because look at what Kanye has going on outside of music right now. So you're talking about dedicating time to the music and the craft, but like, you know, a couple years back they were talking about Kanye filing for bankruptcy, and now he has a $2 billion shoe company. You know, so he's had to get that up and running. You spent time with that. Every other week he's hanging out with Trump or doing something in the social eye. You know, obviously he's married to a Kardashian, which I don't know why, but that's got to take up a lot of his time too. So then when you're thinking about like trying to dedicate, I mean, you don't want to call it a job, but when you're a musician like that professionally, I mean, it takes hours and hours and hours worth of time to put one song out. So when you're trying to put a whole album together, but you're also juggling an up-and-coming billion-dollar company, you're married to the Kardashians, you're always in the social eye, he probably doesn't have as much time to actually dedicate to it, and he probably rushed it just to get it out, unfortunately, at least in my opinion. You know, and you're talking about the sound that's changed and kind of like that same level of dedication. You know, if you talk about, and I can't remember the name of it now, but Eminem's last album before the one he dropped this year, you know, it was a flop. It was terrible. And it was the same sound that he's always put out, but you could tell that it just wasn't the same effort. And you can really feel that in the music. And he even said it himself. He's like, that album was trash because I didn't dedicate enough time to it. So he actually took time. I didn't even know he was putting anything out until he just dropped Kamikaze out of nowhere. And this, music that he's put out this year has been 10 times better, dropping song with like Joyner and like, other collaborations and stuff like that. And he came back to what made him famous. He like started attacking rappers directly, calling them out. And that's who he was. And when he dedicates his time to that craft, there's probably not a whole lot of people that are better than him at that. So like, sometimes you realize it. I haven't put enough effort into this, and I haven't actually taken my time to put out something solid. And I'm hoping Kanye does that and comes out with something better in a couple of years. Because, like, I remember hearing College Dropout, and
Changed my life.
Oh my God,
Changed my life.
that was like. That's like one of those albums you get very few and far in between. Like, Forest Hills, it's an album that you can just listen to every song on the album, and you're not going to skip any songs. And that was probably the first album I had ever listened to where I did not skip a single song, College Dropout. And it's like, that's what you want. Because there's very few artists out there that can do that in general.
I'm going to play devil's advocate real quick. Because so we're like hating on people for putting out things that are different and not putting enough effort into them. And like when that happens, like you said with Eminem, they can flop. But at the same time, artists can put in like their blood, sweat, and tears, all their effort into an album and then have it flop because it's completely different. So like, for example, when Michael Bublé puts out a Christmas album, everyone goes crazy. But if Michael Bublé put out like just a normal music album, which he does, but no one ever talks about those unless it's a Frank Sinatra cover. So he like puts his heart into the songs that he writes on those other albums. But since it's not the sound that they're used to, even though it's got a lot of effort into it, he could do a half-assed Christmas album and it would like go platinum. But if he does like a normal if he does a normal thing, like it's not gonna do anything because even though it's like good music, like scientifically speaking or whatever, it's not what the people think about when they think about Michael Bublé.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love Childish Gambino, because I think if you were to just pick 10 randomly assigned songs from Childish Gambino, would none of them sound the same, but you find that people have either like slept on him and haven't listened to him, or they didn't start listening to him until like Redbone or until like This Is America came out. And most people would think of him as Donald Glover, the actor, or the director of Atlanta, and they're like, oh, he's great at that. He's a musician, like so you get this across the board. And it's one of the things I love about him because, he spends a ton of time on his craft. Again, none of his songs sound the same. And, like, most people either love him or they, like, hate him or they just haven't listened to him. But it's one of those things like you're talking about. It's a gamble because for him, he's all of his music. I mean, even if you go back to, like, pre-mixtapes that he's dropped where he was actually producing music with his comedy troupe, and that music just sounds crazy. And it was like he was doing it and he was like, people are either going to like this or not, but I'm going to produce what I want to produce. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. That makes me think about Wale.
Yeah.
Wale is like so underrated, and like he let that affect him. You know what I'm saying? Because like he was putting out quality music, and he knew he was putting out quality music, and he had those loyal fans. But because he wasn't getting the reaction that, he wanted to get, like being that top tier rapper, being that Drake, that J. Cole, that Kendrick Lamar or something like that, because he wasn't considered that, it just like took him away from like all of the potential that he had to like, just change the game.
Right.
And basically I feel like the community affected him as an artist. Right there, because like he's such a good artist. But because you I feel like you were making, even though it is the way you get your bread and butter, like you were making this more so of a job rather than just like something that you enjoy doing.
A passion.
A passion. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like Kendrick Lamar, to me, he puts out music because he wants to put out music. J.
Right.
Cole puts out music because he wants to put out music. He even said in his songs like, you can mess with me if you, or not, but you know, this is what I do.
Right, and you're talking about communities, and then you're talking about J. Cole. I mean, he puts out Dreamville, and well, this year was Dreamville 3, right? So
Mhm.
he's done this 3 times where he gets up and coming and sometimes new to the front rappers and puts on these collab albums to try and get them to get their sound out there. And if you listen to it, it is absolutely not what is popular today. Like if you're thinking about realistic, it's not mumble rap. It's not.
Mhm.
It's not, in my opinion, just whack ass words over a solid beat. You listen to it, and it's got something there. There's
It's
some meat
got-
and potatoes,
Mhm.
and so it's absolutely against the curve. And guess what? Millions of people listen to it because it's J. Cole.
Right.
So the question I'm gonna ask you guys is like you brought up a good point with Wale. Do you think some rappers do what is popular to get seen and then try and fall back on what they actually want to do as a passion? Or do you think more rappers actually do what they want to do from a passion point, and then when they find that they're not having the success, they fall back on what is popular?
I think Drake is the primary person that just rides the wave of whatever is going on. Drake never, to me, like the people that are solid in their skill and what they do, Migos, Kendrick Lamar, Cole. Everybody else rides the wave to me. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
Because like a lot of people have adopted that Migo flow.
Right.
If you listen to any trap song between Thug, Gunna, Lil Baby, all these new trap artists and stuff like that, they got this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and they're just riding that Migo flow wave.
Right.
And as soon as this thing starts going away, Migos still gonna be there because that's just them.
Right. They've now
Yeah.
established themselves.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Everybody else gonna, you
Right.
know, by the wayside, which is sad. Which is just sad.
Yeah. Well, I think, in my opinion, we had this conversation, Ruben. I think last time you and Randy was up here, is I think it all started like what we're experiencing now, the shift. I think it all started around like the 2008 to 2012 range when you had Waka Flocka come out, and he was really the first rapper I can remember who didn't say shit when he was rapping at all, but it was over a hard beat. And they played it at the club all the time, and they played it on the radio where they could, and bleeped out half of what he was saying anyways.
got.
Yeah,
That's my favorite part.
yeah, right. But it's because like people heard it in the clubs and they was dancing to it, and so we were talking about how it affects the community. The community is like, man, I don't even care what this dude's saying. I want to dance to this beat. And then over the corresponding number of years, you have mumble rap, where it's not a lot of them are saying anything, or when they are, it doesn't make sense or it doesn't really have meaning behind it. I mean, because you're talking about late 2000s, before 2010. During that time period, who was out that was putting up really, really good music? You had Kanye, you had early 50 Cent, you had Ludacris. You know, you had these guys who were like saying something. Whether it was Ludacris just trying to say something that was funny as hell, or it was Kanye, he was hitting you with something deep, or it was 50 Cent talking about clubbing and partying and living it up, they were saying something about the pop culture at that time period. And then you've transitioned through, in my opinion, Waka Flocka into this mumble rap generation of music, or at least hip hop, right? And I think that's where it all started, because people realized, hey, I don't have to say much. I just got to have a really good beat. And then
You
it kind of
think-
transitioned.
You think Waka started the mumble rap?
I don't know if he's not really what I would consider a mumble rapper, but I think he was the first person that really put out something where you realized I don't have to say anything and I can make millions of dollars over a hard beat.
I feel what you're saying on that. But when it comes to like the mumble rap, like the actually not understanding at all what somebody
Right.
is, I have to say is probably between Future and Thug.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm going to
think
point to
that-
Future. I had not brought him into that.
Yeah, like Future and Thug. I say like because the first time I heard Future was the Tony Montana stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like the thing is like, but the first few times I heard it, it sounded like he was saying 20 little children. So I'm like 20 little children, 20 little children. I'm like, is it 20 little children? Is it Tony Montana? Like, I was called Tony Montana. I had to Shazam it because I couldn't anything that he was saying at all, and I was just like, yo, like I don't know what this is, but it was hard.
Right.
It was hard. Like,
and where did they play that, Cam?
they played it everywhere on the radio,
Exactly.
club, everything.
Right.
Bro. Everybody was going crazy to that thing.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. So we as far as the community goes, sometimes it's unfortunate. The community can really dictate what makes it as far as like who can make money in this business. And sometimes it's unfortunate because again, there's phenomenal musicians out there, who put out like not only like good quality sounding music, but they put out like lyrics to go with it. And this is across all genres. They put up lyrics that go with it. They can actually sing, rap, whatever. The sound is there, but it's not going to get played in the club. So it's very rarely going to become super popular, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't make it into the big, music markets like the Atlantas or the LAs or the New Yorks, then, you might have the best singer in the world in Montana. Ain't nobody going to hear it. Nobody. And it's the unfortunate thing because I think as far as businesses, careers, and different things like that goes, music is rare in the fact that it is 100% left up to the consumer as to what's actually going to get put out there.
Mm-hmm.
People see somebody like Future hit it big, and now they're trying to find the next Future, right? They're not trying to, at that point in time, right, 2012, 2013, 2014, they're not trying to find the next 50 Cent. They're not trying to find the next Ludacris. They're not trying to find the next Kanye even. They're trying to find the next Future. So now it's completely changed, and now the effect that the community has on music has revolutionized what's going to be heard for the next 5-10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you listen to Christian radio, they are still playing I Can Only Imagine and In Christ Alone, and that stuff is like from 2002.
Right.
And like it all sounds the same. So they're like in that genre, nothing has changed. Like you've got people like Toby Mac who'll occasionally like throw in, but like it's all the same. It all sounds the same, and it hasn't changed because they're not looking for anything like experimental or different. They're looking for the next Michael W. Smith or the next Stephen Curtis Chapman or the next Amy Grant. They're
looking for somebody who can just recreate what's already there. So that's what's interesting about the religious community in general. You get a little bit of variance when you start changing from like Christian music to more of like the gospel, because the gospel kind of changes a little bit more. But if you're looking at just like straight up Christian music, I mean, almost every single song is to the same.
It's the same chord structure. Yeah, it's the same.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
the
Like
same time signatures.
They don't change anything. You could literally take the words from one song and put it over the I'll say beat, but it's not really a beat.
Yeah.
The music to a different song, and it would flow right the same way because it's always the same.
I mean,
not
pop,
looking for
even just
changes.
normal pop music does that.
Oh, you just mean in general, like pop music? Yeah.
Just in general, pop music, like the top 40 or whatever. Like
somebody
people mash those things up. DJ Earworm, mashes stuff up all the time, and it like you're like, oh, or like Tenacious D, or not Tenacious D, Axis of Awesome did the 4-chord song where like it's the same 4 chords that are in like 60 different songs.
I forgot who did it. I saw a YouTube video where they took like Taylor Swift's songs, like her like top 5 pop songs, and then they literally just played them and then like seamlessly one over the other, and it was literally the same song with just like some different like added stuff in the background. It was the same exact song.
Couple of eighth notes different.
Yeah, it was actually, I heard that and I was like, dang, she made millions of dollars off the same song like 5 times. Yeah,
you just dropped it 5
different times.
Dropped it 5 times.
Yeah.
Boy. 5 million.
Yeah.
5 times. Just one song. Now, all she had to do was say, instead of "I'm going down the street," she's saying, "I'm going up the street."
That's
Or
it.
just
Had to
change the
change.
key. Like,
She just changed.
Change the key.
She changed the boyfriend she broke up with, and then just dropped it 5 times. That's what it was.
Let's break that down a little bit, because there is, on one hand, search for 100% originality and authenticity, and the other side is the marketing and the sustainability of, I want to make the same thing a different way 100 times, because that's what's going to sell, and that's what's going to make allow for me to fund future projects.
Right.
So all of you guys interacting with musical spaces, what is authenticity to you? Is it doing the same thing very crisply and very cleanly over and over again? Or is it chasing that originality above everything else?
Well, the thing is about a lot of that is like when we look at things like technology, we want the same thing, just newer. Every single solitary time. We want like we want a new camera, but we already had a camera. We want a new screen, but we already had a screen. We want a new touch, whatever, like anything like that. So,
I want my apps to look a little bit rounder instead of square.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Just little small little things, but generic, like realistically, it's the same exact thing.
Yeah.
If we think about music that was created back in the day, I might have had a little bit of difference in the chord structure and the quality in which we could produce it at, but technically it's still all the same, and a lot of people don't like that change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like, when it comes to all of that, like you really want to just listen to something that, makes you feel good. Those things that you already like have in you that you like already, you just gonna automatically adapt to those things way better than anything new. You hear something new, you just got to be like, I don't know how I like that. I don't know.
Right.
Like,
Well,
used to that.
It depends too on like what sort of community you grow up in, on what kind of music you're just like predisposed to like, because like the Oriental like music structures is incredibly dissonant to someone who listens to Western music most of the time. So it's it takes getting used to. I grew up not listening to rap or metal or anything like that. So that kind of like, it takes a while for me to like appreciate something.
Yeah.
Because I'm not used to hearing those particular notes together, or the way that they put pauses in, or the way that they just don't pause at all. Like,
right.
Or if you go into like the Indian kind of background of music, that is incredibly dissonant to someone who listens to Western music.
Yeah.
So I took ancient Greek in college, and that is a very tonal language, kind of like Chinese is. And so when we have discovered ancient music from ancient Greece, it's incredibly awkward to listen to. But it doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
Because we're not used to those sounds being put together in that way, or the like it's all minor. So we're not used to that. We like round, whole, warm tones, and anything different is going to be weird. But if someone grew up in that perspective, they're going to think our stuff is like, what the hell is this?
To your point, Melissa, what do you hear all the time from so I'm gonna be stereotypical here just to prove a point. So when you hear like a guy walks into a bar and he's got cowboy boots on, a cowboy hat, he's got the buttoned up shirt tucked into his blue jeans, and he hears rap on the radio, the first thing he's gonna say is, "Man, all this shit sounds the same." Right?
Like, what incarnation? Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
So,
but and then like my parents, they're not like cowboy boots buttoned up, whatever.
right.
But they were incredibly religious for the most of my like formative years, and if they listen to that, or if my mom listens to metal, like even Def Leppard, like she's like, you can't understand any of the words they're saying. How do you know blah 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 that they're not telling you to go kill somebody? Or like, I'm like, I mean, it doesn't. I'm not listening for the words, Mom.
Yeah.
I like the music, but I do get like the words matter.
Yeah.
But they're not the whole part.
Well, yeah, and like for me, I don't listen to country music because I think all country music sounds the same. You know, they're always talking
Yeah.
about their dog getting killed or they're, divorcing their ex or whatever. And in my mind, it's all the same. Obviously, it's not. So I fall, or I'm a proponent of this as well. And then like what Kim was saying earlier about like when you hear something new, most of the time people just cut it off. Nope, this all sounds the same. I don't want to listen to this. But if they listen to it, it normally takes them a few minutes to figure it out. Case in point, we were riding to Savannah on a party bus. Ruben was there, and we were listening to a whole bunch of Uncle Luke. Right? You had a whole bunch of people who were jamming out to Uncle Luke. So I told Denzel to play Rain Boots and a Thong. Right? And it's something new, but it fits right up there as far as what they're saying and the beat, right up there with Uncle Luke. And everybody on the bus stopped for like a good 25 seconds. And so Denzel's dad was like, this song's all right. And then they all started singing it. Literally, they gave it like 25. Did they not, Ruben?
Yeah, 100%.
And then they're like, all right, fuck it up. Let's go. And then because it was similar enough to what, they were already listening to, but they gave it that chance. Otherwise, they'd be like, the hell is this? Cut this off. Boom. Which is like, when country comes on, I was riding with my coworker to the job site, and he was playing his music on his phone. And every country song that came up, I was like, next.
Well, the thing is like if you take the twang out of that country, give it to 21 Savage or give it to Drake or
Lil Nas X.
Lil Nas.
Yeah.
And like put it on another beat.
Yep.
We all on it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just the twang. It's playing. Like I really think it's just that and that guitar sound and that slow little melody and
Old Town Road made Lil Nas X millions and millions and millions of dollars off of one.
And it set the record for who like the top song on the Billboard for the longest amount of time.
Yeah, and what was it? It was a country song that he then rapped over.
Yes,
that's literally what it was, with a little bit of beat in the background. But that was it. I mean, you had Miley Cyrus's dad out there playing guitar for him. So I mean, I honestly thought
that song was a joke. Like he had to have been joking in the studio and say, "I'm gonna put this out." Somebody liked it. It went there. It went
viral.
And then somebody started going in the cowboy boots. Yeah, it started going crazy. Started making memes off of it.
Yeah,
man, blew up.
Yeah.
Then they really, because didn't they take it off it was a country song originally.
It was.
And then they took it off the Billboard because they didn't say that it fit with the country genre.
Yeah.
Billy Ray on it, put them back on the country.
Yep. That sure did. And that's what we're talking about with the community making it the effect is the fact that someone saw that and it went viral. Right?
Yeah.
If no one had made that go viral, it probably would have taken that man probably too long to try and get that on the radio and get it heard by people. The fact that it went viral, and that's kind of like another way that nowadays is different than like in the 90s. Nowadays, I think it's probably easier and harder to get heard. It's probably easier to get your stuff out there on the internet, to get it on social media, to get it heard by people. But I think it's also harder to make a good living off of it as a new up-and-comer because the market's so flooded with everybody putting stuff out there.
Got Rebecca Black's Friday. Went viral on the internet, but she is not making music money.
No.
Because that was like a flash in the pan and then it was done.
Are you talking about the Friday?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, okay.
And then they do that for anyone who pays for it. So there's also, I do this to my students every year. I play this song every single day the week before Thanksgiving break. It's called It's Thanksgiving. It's the same production company, the same black guy raps in it, and it's this like 11-year-old girl singing about Thanksgiving with all her friends and like singing like a turkey leg as a microphone, and there's macaroni and cheese in there, and it's Thanksgiving, and it's the worst. But it has a cult following because it's like a Thanksgiving song, and it's so bad.
Yeah. So I'll take it back. We had flashes in the pan before everything kind of popped off. Like think about Hurricane Chris with A Baby. That song hit it huge, He didn't put out another song that I ever heard, that anybody I know ever heard. It was
nothing recognizable, because I remember him putting out something else, but I
didn't
don't
listen to it.
Right, I'm gonna have to YouTube it to find something like that.
Yeah, and
We're
that's
just one-hit wonders. Like, "Hey
Yeah.
Mickey, You're So Fine" by Tony Basil. Like,
Yeah.
that's the only song they put out.
Oh, by the way,
that
Billy Ray
they-
Cyrus is famous and rich off of one song, "Achy
And
Breaky
Achy
Heart."
Breaky Heart.
Yeah, and then that was in the '80s, and that man hasn't put out another song that was anywhere near the charts until the remix of Old Town Road.
Of Old Town Road.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you had told him back in '85 that his next hit was going to be in 2019 and it was going to be a song that was technically somebody rapping over, he would have called you crazy. You know, and it's just it's funny how when you start diving down into it, like, people put out bad movies all the time, and people will watch bad movies. They can put out horror, like around Halloween time, millions of terrible horror movies go out, and millions of people watch them, right? Because for some reason, in my opinion, in the movie industry, people can put out movies and they can make money, and the effect that the community has on it is not as great as the effect that the movie has on the community. Whereas music, I think
Hallmark
it's
Channel.
I think, yeah, you're right, and I think it's backwards in music. I think the fact that, like, people just won't buy or listen to bad music, or what they consider bad music, it forces them to change what they're putting out to try and make the community buy it. And I think that's where the difference is. Like, you know, the community affects the music industry more. You know, it's kind of like, this pops off, this goes viral, this is hot. How many remixes of Old Town Road did we get?
About
85 million.
Yes, that's my point exactly. They were like, okay, we are going to ride this cash cow until it dies, until we absolutely kill it. I mean, how often do people say, I hate listening to the radio, because they take the one song that's hot and they play it every other song.
ruin it.
But it's because you have people that's what they want to hear right then and there. So I'm just going to play it, and I'm going to play it, and then the song's dead. Now it doesn't get played, you know? And I think it's crazy the impact that the community and the world really have on the music industry.
So I've got two, and they're older. So you've got like the War, What Is It Good For by Edwin Starr. Like, during all that time when we were getting in stupid wars, no, like,
Yesterday.
right, like back in the day. Like,
This week.
what is it good for? Like, all like songs like that, really questioning what was going on. And then you've got things like We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel, which is just like, it's not analyzing what's going on. It's just saying, hey, like, all of this stuff has gone on. And so, like, our English teacher uses that song as a project for kids, where they pick something that Billy Joel mentioned in there, and they have to actually research what it was about. And then they do where they write the next. So it stopped in like the late 80s, I think, is when he wrote it. So like that's when the event stopped. So they have to write the rest of they have to write a couple more verses to bring it up into modern day. Like, what events were important enough to remember, but like, we don't remember, like, the Children of Thalidomide. We don't know what that's about, right? But like, back then, that was an important, not when he was writing, but when he, like, whatever decade that was, like, that was an important thing that was happening in society that we forgot about. So things, when songs talk about things like that, that, you know, 20 years from now, people are going to be like, what was that? And then they're going to have to look and like, oh, like, we're repeating this history. Maybe we should not do that.
Yeah. So the song that comes to my mind is Changes by Tupac. It's probably my favorite song. And it is as relevant today as it was when the song came out in the early 90s. And it's like in the, when he's talking about cops killing black people and being recognized as heroes. He talks about the fact that he's trying to sell drugs to feed his family, and that's what he's being penalized for, when there's other people out here killing people for no reason who aren't facing justice, and they go to war, or the government goes to war over marijuana charges and stuff like that. And it's all these things that are still happening 30 years later, and it's exactly the same, and it's as relevant as it was then. And it's one of those things that, like, history repeats itself, but it repeats itself because, like, the world allows it to, right? And it's one of those things that you see a school shooting, right? The school shooting will be on the news, every single news station, for 3 days, and then you don't ever hear about that school again. You know, it just goes by the wayside because Trump's dumbass tweet is now more popular in the news. Like, I'm dead ass serious. Like, it's more popular in the news trend than what we should be trying to focus on as community. And then, like, the news just focuses on what the majority of people want to hear and see, right? So then you have, again, back to the community. It's like, I'm kind of tired of hearing about this school shooting. I want to hear something else. And then the social, I guess, aspect of it, like the news station is just giving them what they want to hear, just like with music. You know, I'm tired of hearing about everything that's going wrong in the streets. I want to hear about how we can have a good time, make a ton of money, you know, smoke, drink, and party at strip clubs. So then you have that transition of, I'm no longer want to hear about this. I see it every day. Let me listen to something that, like, is what I want to aspire to be, or what I want to do this weekend, you know? So you see that kind of change.
I think that one song in particular that I think about, because they made a specific term for it, it's called protest music. But one song that I think about is What's Going On. I think that's Marvin Gaye, What's Going On. Just talking about, like, everything that was going on, civil rights and stuff like that. Just having that song really sticks out to me. And, like, today, as far as, like, protest music goes, they kind of adopted Kendrick Lamar's All Right, but I don't know if it necessarily captures the same feeling or describes it the same way as What's Going On. I think that one's, like, the most pivotal song that I can think of in my memory. It's like, mother, mother, why are you crying? Father, father, father. It's like all of those emotions in that song. It's like, yeah.
I feel like, you know, I think we talked about it earlier, you know, for, like, you know, protest music in regards to that, I think This Is America is, like, one of the most influential, because I think it wouldn't have been the same had he just dropped the song and not the video.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. All of the symbolism and all of the imagery that was going on in his video, like, oh man, we got, like, you know, police brutality. We got, you know, kids in the school system getting shot, and, you know, you got all of this stuff.
Right.
That's, like, talking about all of these terrible issues that are going on in America, and he's saying, like, yeah, this is the America that.
This is America.
Yeah, like,
what got me about that video is every time something happened, right? Like the church getting shot up, the choir, he immediately went back into dancing and group dancing and over a nice solid beat, because it would pause every time somebody got shot in that video. There was a pause. The music broke. But then you would get back into the music and start dancing again. I remember watching the first, I watched some reaction videos to it to get, you know, see what other people were thinking. And there was these two young African-American brothers that have a YouTube channel, and they were reviewing it, and they were like, oh, shoot, like, you know, somebody just got shot. And then you see their face light up and they're smiling again. They're like, oh, man, he's dancing crazy, man. Look at him out there dancing. I'm like, that's the big takeaway from that, is the fact that you see that, and then you just move on from it and go back to what is popular in music or popular in pop culture at that point in time. You just move right on past it, and it's almost like we've become, I guess, used to, or I don't want to say comfortable. We've become so used to the idea that people get shot all the time that it's almost like we just kind of wax over it and move on. And I thought that was the biggest takeaway from what he was putting out there.
Things like the U2 song Sunday Bloody Sunday, about the Irish Civil War stuff, or the bombing thing that happened. And McDonald's in Portugal this past week, had an ad for Halloween. They did like spooky sundaes, like the ice cream, with strawberry syrup to look like blood. And their ad said Sunday, Bloody Sunday, but Sunday with the AE, like the
Yeah.
ice cream. So, but like, notwithstanding that could be like a copyright issue, like they forgot the whole message of the song, which was about like these people got bombed.
Right.
People died.
Right.
And they're just like, oh, look, it's a spooky Sunday and we're referencing a song.
Not cool.
And then what are you hearing in the hip hop and rap culture? You're not hearing a whole lot about what's going on with these social issues right
The
now.
music is an escape right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, the
There's-
music is an escape. The music is not being used like it was in the 60s or like it was in the 90s when the war on drugs happened, right? It's not being used to say, hey, guys, this is what we're being brainwashed with. Let's push to the forefront. You have a song here or a song there. You don't have people putting out a plethora of songs on this topic, in my opinion.
It's crazy.
But-
It doesn't sell.
But, well, it
Right.
also could be fear because, like, from a classics perspective, we're in like this Caligula-esque era where, like, if you put out stuff that criticizes the government, like, you're gonna get backlash from that. This whistleblower that they're trying to get identified, like, you can't protest these things through other media like music or art or whatever without getting, ruined.
But see, so here's the difference, and I think you're right. I think fear does play a role, but do you think fear conquered Malcolm X? Do you think fear conquered Martin Luther King Jr.?
No, and there are always people who will like do that regardless.
Right.
But since media is different, like with radio is different, the internet is different, they can do so many more different like ways to censor or just like hide your videos to where they're not popping up
But
at the top of the list to be found. So
they've been doing it for years. I mean, more recently, do you think NWA was censored? They absolutely were, but their message was strong enough that it got out there. Hey man, fuck the police, right? But I'm serious. Like that is, if you were to say that right now, they were like, oh, you're just another person saying that. They were the first people to say that and put it in front page news. Yeah, fuck them. Here it is. I'm gonna put it on an album, and I'm gonna sell millions of these things.
Oh my God! Oh my
Right.
God!
Right. So where is that right now? So, some of those people are still here. Dr. Dre and Ice Cube are still alive. They could very easily still be doing this. I think what's happened though is the fear that Melissa's talking about. They have millions and millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars now, and they don't want to risk that. In my opinion, and it's not just on them; it's on everybody as a whole. But nobody, in my opinion,
It's
nobody
willing
is
to take
putting that out
risk.
there.
And
Right.
nobody's willing to take
Counterpoint.
that risk either.
All right.
Counterpoint. Eminem's BET fuck Trump cipher. That's about as blatant as you can get.
Yeah.
Does that not count because it was a cipher and it wasn't over a beat?
But the thing is BET 1, 2. It's the hip hop culture,
Yeah.
and everybody is gonna say fuck Donald Trump anyway.
Okay, so it wasn't said in an area that it needed to be said.
Correct.
Right? You know what I'm saying? You say it at a Trump rally, everybody finna go crazy, right?
Yeah. Who? I'm trying to think who I was sitting next to. I thought. Oh no, it was a movie. I was watching a movie, and there was this white guy who said something to this black guy, like joking around. They were friends, and the black guy was like, "Whoa, man, you can't say that." And the white guy's like, "Nah, man, like I watch BET." And then the black guy's like, "Nah, I'm just playing with you." And the white guy's like, "Yeah, man, I don't watch BET." And it was like the black guy also said, "Nah, I don't watch it either." But like the joke hit home. It was like, yeah. There's probably a large portion of white people that listen to rap and hip hop. That portion of people, for the most part, probably don't watch BET, right? I know tons of people that listen to rap music, but haven't never seen Coming to America. And Coming to America comes on BET like every freaking weekend. It's probably on TV right now, and they ain't never seen it. So that told me all I need to know about the fact that they don't watch BET, because it's on
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
So
Right.
so again, like Taylor's saying, it's hitting a part. Like the cipher probably hit a part of the market, but didn't hit everywhere. It's not, that cipher wasn't being played on the radio. That cipher,
it's not. It's not reaching the people that it's not reaching the people that it will drastically offend.
Right. And that's what you're trying to do. Like, I don't want to necessarily say you should like go out and try to offend people, but nobody changes without getting outside of their comfort zone, right?
Exactly.
Getting outside of your comfort zone is probably the best thing that as a culture we really need to push for in this day and age.
Because the most dangerous thing you can do is say, like, why is this being done? Oh, because that's how it's always been done.
Correct.
That's the most dangerous thing to society.
Correct. Right.
And that's a human flaw everywhere. Like,
yeah.
I teach kids and teach drumline and stuff like that. And there are percussion instructors that they've had before. Most of the time when I tell them to do something like this, they'll say, well, this person told me to do it this way.
Right.
Well, bro, now I'm telling you to do it this way. I'm sorry that I'm changing you, but change. We got to recognize and instill in our kids at a young age that change is not bad.
Right.
Change is okay.
Right.
And I think music education is a good way that at least I was exposed to different cultures and different points of view, and all of that is because when you have a good arts program in school, you're learning about, like, you're singing songs in choir that, like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or when an all-white choir sings like an
Praises
old,
what
like,
I do.
or like an old slave song, like Michael Row Your Boat Ashore, like you don't, it's not the same, but if the
you're exposed to it.
You're exposed to it. And if the teacher is a good music teacher, they're going to talk about the context in which that song was made. And to kind of like say, like, this is what was happening, and this was the only way that they could communicate about things, or the only way that they could, find a release, or the only way that they could, pretend to have hope for their situation is through singing. And you go through things and you learn about like drum circles or all kinds of other different things, and you learn about the different cultures. And because music in all of the cultures is like a very important part, and has been since the dawn of time. It's like an identifying part of a culture, and like it's condensed, like your society, your culture, your beliefs are condensed into a small piece when you have music. And that's a great way for kids to start learning about things when you do that.
That's why. So two things on that. Like you're talking about getting up in front and singing in front. So my elementary school put on shit all the time where we would just get up there and sing. I wasn't part of no chorus or anything like that. We would get up there and we would sing, put on a show, I guess, whatever. And I remember we put on every year. So 5 years throughout elementary school. Every year there was one song that was on every single one of those. The rest of them all changed. The themes all changed. Every single year we sang "We Are Family" by Sister Sledge. And like, you say what you want to say about the song or whatever, came out in, I think, the late 70s, early 80s or something like that. But you're sitting there and you're like, we are all a family, right? And I had a really good music teacher in elementary school. And she always pushed that. She would put you, like, group you with different people to do music stuff, and then change groups so that we all got together. And her big thing was, we're all people, and we're all one big family, and we got to act like that. And as a kid, that was just how I was raised anyways, so it didn't make that big of a deal. And I really haven't thought about it since then until you brought that point up, and I was like, holy crap. That's the only song I remember singing, because we sang it every single year. And the message was huge, right? Much bigger than what we could grasp as a first grader or a second grader. But what she had us doing by working with different groups of people was, she was, breaking down barriers. She was making us, or not me personally, but she was making some of those kids probably uncomfortable. And she was trying to teach them that, hey, we're all the same. Doesn't really matter what you look like. We're all the same. And I think that's a huge, huge, huge message. And then I honestly forgot what my second point was.
Well, and then like our ELA teachers in high school where I work now,
Yeah.
they use Tupac in their poetry unit.
Yeah, Tab used Tupac in her poetry unit.
Is she sitting right there?
She just walked in with some breakfast.
Hey, Tab.
But yeah, so I mean,
But yeah, like they take the name off of they like don't do it through the song. They just have the lyrics and they take Tupac's name off because most of our students have not actually listened to Tupac.
right.
And
Mhm.
they
Travesty.
analyze it like a poem, and they're trying to figure out like what the author's point of view is, like who do you think the author is, and then they go through like about and then like they're like, oh, it's probably some like old white guy, blah blah blah, just doing his little thing in England, and then they're like, this is Tupac, and then like what,
That's
and
on
then
you.
like knowing that
Yeah.
like changes their whole perspective,
Right.
of
Yeah.
of the words.
That's
Of
like
what it means.
like the best song that I wish everybody could listen to right now. That's more recent. That really, when I heard it, really reminded me of like a Tupac type song was "A Tale of Two Cities" by J. Cole. It's because he does something in that song that Tupac used to do that not many musicians across the board really do, and it was, I'm going to show you your point of view, and I'm going to show you my point of view. Same situation, and I'm going to let you understand what it means to be in my shoes. Okay?
Mhm.
And when you hear that song and you listen to it, first of all, the song sounds great. The song actually, in my opinion, sounds more upbeat than the message that's trying to be portrayed. Because when you really listen to the
Mhm.
words, it's like, this guy's getting robbed at a stoplight, man. And then you're like, oh shit, this guy's doing the robbing at the stoplight. And you're just like, wow, you hear both perspectives, and it's like,
That cognitive dissonance though with the upbeat music and the like that doesn't match like the tone of the lyrics
yeah,
is supposed to make you think that. Like
oh
it's supposed
yeah.
to be like, oh, we think we do this all the time.
The song that does that the absolute most, and I'm sure we probably all have heard it, "Pumped Up Kicks."
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Pumped Up Kicks
All
is so
the current kids for the. I was just
Yeah.
thinking about that. Like I was
Yeah.
like, that's the one because like my girlfriend would listen to it, and I was like, well, this sounds like a very happy song. She was like, this song is about suicide.
yeah.
Like, what? Hold on, because like
And it's about like school shootings, and it bundles all this stuff that's going on right now, bundles into this thing, and it just says, hey, this is really happy. Here you go. And you listen to it. First time I listened to it, I didn't even listen to the words. I was like, man, this
Right.
song sounds great. The second time I listened to it, I
Yeah.
listened to the words, and I'm like, this is terrible.
this is
Really,
bad. Like,
really terrible. But it's something that applies to to what's going on right now. And if you
Yeah.
really think about it, it's one of the ways that people could probably get their message across and still put out music that is popular. Because if you have a really like hard beat that you can play in the club that's kind of upbeat, up tempo, and everyone's dancing to it, and then you put words over it that have some meaning and some power behind them, a punch to them. I mean, that's probably a way that people could probably get something across in this day and age and maybe get it played. But
Yeah, but if you ask 10 people on the street what Pumped Up Kicks is about,
no one knows.
maybe one of them would know.
Yeah. No,
That's the same way with Swimming Pools by Kendrick.
yep.
yeah.
Literally, the whole song is about alcoholism, but it's telling you like, hey, turn up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Love dancing to it. It's like, hold on, man. They're actually abusing alcohol throughout this entire song.
Mhm.
I have abused alcohol while listening to that song. So
Me
the-
too.
yeah, we've done it together.
I have one that I want to pivot to because I'm curious what you guys think. Logic's 1-800, whatever the number is, the suicide hotline song. I would be willing to make a
Yeah.
hot enough take to say objectively the lyrics aren't super good and the beat's not super memorable, but it has a great message and it reached a lot of people. Would it have been more or less impactful had it been objectively a 10 out of 10 song outside of its message?
Mm.
I actually took that, Taylor, and I might be the only one who's took it this way, but I took it as not everything is always okay, right? Like the music wasn't great, but I felt like it was conveyed in a way that was like, it's okay not to be
Okay.
great all the time, you know? That's how I took it, because I took it at a much probably deeper level than what they were trying to do or intending to put it out there as. But that's how I took it.
I think that something that, like, with culture today, because we have so many things pulling our attention, that when we listen to music, we're listening to the beat and maybe to the words, but we're not like thinking about them. And I think that with a song like that, when people do that, because it gets publicity on like Twitter or BuzzFeed or whatever about what it's about, I think that was helpful in getting that message across. But I think if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have known. And
Oh, you mean if it wouldn't have been on social media?
Right. If it hadn't been on social media or like just mainstream media of like, oh, he just wrote a song about the suicide hotline, I wouldn't have known that's what it was about, because I'm not thinking about the words with the music. I'm thinking about, okay, cool, yeah, this is a bop. I can do this. And like also scrolling on, I don't know, Pinterest or something. And the kids aren't, because they always ask me to play songs in class. And so I'm like, okay, well, you have to email me the name of the song and I have to listen to it first because I'm not trying to get fired. And they're not thinking about the word. I'm like, this song is about raping people. What are you doing? Or like, they're like, oh, but the beat's so good. I'm like, but that, like that, they're like, oh, I didn't even know that. Like, I didn't even know that's what the word said. I'm like, you need to think, kid. Like, they're not thinking about the words. And I think that if that song would have been more impactful if it had, if people thought about the words. But
a lot of people actually do just listen to music passively and not really like, actively listening to the message behind the song. If they think that this thing just sounds catchy, I'm like, it's the terrible songs like Ice JJ Fish. This song, it was just catchy, and like it was an awful song, terrible to listen to, but everybody listened to it. He has millions and millions of views on YouTube, just going crazy. But the fact of the matter is, it's a lot of things out there that are catchy. There's a song, Water, from Ugly God. Come on, man. Water.
Yeah.
Well, and then like I think that this song too, the 1-800 whatever, I think part of it was just it's sort of capitalizing on a modern hot button issue, or a top like he's just like, oh, this is something that's big. We should write a song. Oh, it'll be controversial. Let's do that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, because I feel like that does happen. So, but I also think like, I don't know. We were talking about like really putting your heart in the music that you make. I think you can tell, right? I think you can tell. So I think like if you grab a Tupac song where
I can feel it.
He's it's a feeling, and we go back to music too. You talking about listening to music passively. Sometimes we listen to upbeat music passively just to get ourselves up, right? To bring ourselves up to a level, right? And sometimes when you want to wallow in your sadness, you throw on some sad music, right? So it just, I think there's a feeling to it, and that feeling comes across in the way they bring the music to life. So like when Tupac is talking about a topic like that, or when J. Cole's talking about a topic like that, like you feel like he's in it still, right? This man probably lives in a mansion and has millions of dollars, and he's probably not in it anymore like he used to be, at least, or if he is, it's in a much less capacity. But like you feel like he's still in it when that song comes out or comes on the radio, because he's speaking with like a passion that comes from experience, and I think you can really convey that message in music, and you can actually feel it. So
I've got another song if nobody has any other thoughts on that one.
Okay.
So I'm not sure who's familiar with this, but when To Pimp a Butterfly was coming out, the single version of I was much different than the album version of I. And I thought at the time that was the coolest bait and switch. But just the idea of you got people hooked with the single knowing it was catchy, they're going to listen to it again on the album. and then you hit them upside the head with something they did not see coming. I thought that was one of the most phenomenal things. And
Man,
it looks like Kim has some thoughts on that as well.
he hit us with the Negus. And then, boy, I'll tell you when, like, that to this day is my favorite album. I got it like wired right up there. I got the record. That is my favorite album, period.
Yeah.
Like, Kendrick Lamar is my favorite artist. I love all the work that he does. Like, his music is very, very impactful. But if you don't listen to, like, what he is saying, you will never understand, like,
Any of it.
any of it.
Right.
To a lot of people say that, you know, Oh Damn was a really good album, and Good Kid, Mad City was his best, and, you know, Section 80 was just like, you know, him getting started off and all that stuff. But to me, you know, I love every Kendrick album out there. However, To Pimp a Butterfly is the best conceptual album that I've ever heard in my life. Just from top to bottom of, like, him talking about everything. And then, like, the poem that he had in the end. Well, basically, you know, he built the poem as he continued through the album. I remember being conflicted, misusing my influence, you know what I'm saying? All that stuff. Like, you'd be able to hear it all the way through until the bottom. And then when he gets to the Mortal Man, you know, I've studied this album. So when he gets to Mortal Man, you know, he actually has this conversation with Tupac.
Yeah.
And it actually blew my mind. Like, because, like, who thinks of that? One. Two, and then, like, the issues that you're talking about just in today's society, like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That
And this is one of those things that, like, I try to, if people don't listen to rap music, I try to tell them, I point them in directions of songs or albums like this, and I tell them to just go print the lyrics off and read it.
Yep.
If you don't like the music, fine. Treat it as a poem and just print the lyrics off and read them, because the message across the board, you know, and I've had people who've read the lyrics and be like, yeah, man, I read the lyrics and I wanted to hear the song. So then I listened to the song and it actually sounded different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it didn't sound like all this other rap jargon, you know, because you talk to people who just don't listen to rap music, because, again, we go back to what we were talking about earlier, it all sounds the same. But, like, have them read the lyrics, then listen
The
to
words
the song.
matter.
Correct.
Well, I mean, and poetry, like, music is poetry. Poetry is music. You cannot separate them, because even, like, way back, ancient Greece, I'm going to keep bringing that up, like,
All roads
the
lead to Rome.
Odyssey and the Iliad is music. Like, we found pieces of the score to, like, the tonal, like, notes for that. Like, there's a beat to it. There's different, like, inflections to it. And that's just how, like, that, and the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Aeneid, those are, like, important, culturally relevant texts that were, like, they're epics, right?
Yeah.
So that the most important part of that culture was music, was poetry. And so, like, that has kind of continued on through today. The most important part of our culture that we, I think, as a society kind of overlook now is music, because that's where people say what they feel.
Yep.
Because that's more of a safe space to say whatever you're thinking, is to put it in your music and then just put it out.
Oh, yeah. Were you going to say something, Ruben?
Yeah, so to that point, I think that even when we look at, like different TV shows and things that are based on, like, way back in the day, even like a Game of Thrones, they always say, like, people are going to sing songs about you. Like, that's how you're remembered. Through, like, that's the easiest way to remember a story. Put a song to it, boom.
Yeah.
Out of here forever. Like, because getting to the theory of humans, like, we pass on information orally.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so the easiest, put it to a melody, boom, you're going to remember that over generations. But to the point of Kendrick, the reason why he's my favorite rapper is because the time and the effort. Like, 'cause remember we were talking about that with Kanye.
Yeah.
I think Kendrick sits there and is like, okay, what am I going, like, what is the entire message that I'm going to say with this album? So he creates that entire thing, boom, 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 has the input of all the people that he works with, gets there, it's like, okay, which songs can I pull out of there? Just like, okay, you're going to listen to this, but I'm going to give you this entire thing later on. And so he chooses that, just like Humble off the Damn album.
Yep.
He pulls out Humble. It's like, okay, everybody's nodding to it. There's speculation about diss tracks and all this stuff. Okay, got all that. Then it comes to the album and the sequence, because I listened to this podcast called Dissect, which is a really, really good podcast on Spotify. And it like talks about every track on the album is like a human emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It describes a human emotion within the music on every single song. I was like, the thought process behind all of that is amazing. But to go back to the Butterfly, I think that his original point was to set out like, okay, this is going to be a Black album. So every aspect of Black music throughout history is going to be displayed on this album, along with the story that's being told about Black people in America and back to Africa. So the level of like intricacies in that.
Yeah, if you print out the lyrics to every song on the album and just put them back to back to back, it's more of it reads more like a book. It's a history.
Yep.
Like you're saying, it's on day one, this is where we're at, and this is where we're at the end.
Yep.
And that's and it would read that way, you know.
Yeah.
And it's you were talking about like, human beings passing along information orally, and then talk about setting it to a tone. I mean, the first song you probably learned as a kid, ABCs.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They put it to a melody so that you can remember it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is as simple as that across the board, and ever since then your mind evolves to where it's at, currently, of trying to understand topics through music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is why, to Melissa's point, throughout history, and to Ruben's point too, throughout history, even fantasy history, Game of Thrones isn't even real, but they understand the fact that music is what's gonna stay, right? You want your name written in history, put your name in a song, right? I mean, books will last too, but where are we at in this day and age? Books probably aren't actually going to be around much longer. It's all going to be on the computer, right? So realistically, you start thinking about that, and you're like, music will always be what it is because it's a sound.
And if you think about the amount of power that music has the potential for, like because you remember, was it Spy Kids? Like they're indoctrinating, or Zoolander, they're indoctrinating people by showing them music. I was watching NCIS the other day, and one of the episodes was like this metal song that they were pushing out to kids for free on some social media thing. And like, if you weren't like paying attention to the words or the beat, because the beat was in Morse code, but it was like subconsciously drilling into these little kids' brains to like go kill people, or go plant bombs in places. So like that music has power.
Oh yeah.
And it's scary, but it's also it's what enacts change.
You look at the Salem witch trials and look at the paintings and the drawings from that period of time. The witches weren't chained at the wrist and at the ankles. They had their mouths sewn shut because they thought that words and sounds were so powerful that it had to be what witches used to cast spells, right? It wasn't their hands, it wasn't them moving about, none of that. In every single one of those drawings and pictures, their mouths were sewn shut because of the power of sound.
To me, The most quintessential protest song is Jimi Hendrix's rendition of the Star Spangled Banner from Woodstock. Because of who it is and how he did it, you can't say that he treated the Star Spangled Banner or the flag that it represents disrespectfully. He has way too much technical presence and performative ability. He treated the source material with respect, but it's so drawn out and so dissonant that wordlessly you can hear the commentary and just the way that he feels that the country is tearing itself apart. What are the modern versions of songs like that that are just viscerally kind of dissonant? I know This Is America is probably going to be the most recent one, but what are some other ones that you guys kind of have in mind?
Mark Antony's funeral speech from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. He's saying, "Oh, Brutus is a noble man and a kind and a blah blah blah," and all this time he's saying this about like Brutus just killed Caesar. Like when you say things, but the silence in between your words or the just
Inflection.
your inflection that you use,
It's like sarcasm
like,
almost.
right. It's kind of like that, but it's like the impact that like what you don't say.
Yeah.
Which is like what Taylor was saying with the Star Spangled Banner. He said all the things, right? And he was technically fine. He wasn't being disrespectful, but the silence in what he
Wasn't saying.
he said so much in that silence.
Yeah, and I personally have not heard this rendition, but I will listen to it after this podcast. But just based on Taylor's description of it, it is, you get that all the time, especially nowadays. Like sarcasm is a huge form of comic relief, but you can say a lot, like, and you says you know who Jimi Hendrix is, you know his quality and the way he performs work. So like at work, for like me, there's been some situations where like somebody's boss comes, I'm not using any names, somebody's boss comes over and says, "Man, you really need to get this done," and then his subordinate's like, "Fuck off," right? And then the boss is like, "You're so funny," and walks away. But if you know that person, you're like, he absolutely was not joking. He literally just told his boss to fuck off. But he put inflections in it because you just had to see his face. He was so serious in his face. But the inflections that he said over his cubicle was, haha, friendly, jovial, fuck off. And now it sounds like sarcasm, but absolutely not the facade that he had put on. And I think that, again, you have body language and then you have your actual inflection in your voice and your tone. And we're talking about, music as a whole. Your inflection and that tone that you use says just as much about what you're saying as the words do. We talked earlier about the feeling and the emotions that are conveyed through your music. That's all in the sound. It has absolutely nothing to do with the words. When you listen to Kendrick Lamar, you feel what he is feeling, right? And that's because he puts that feeling into the tone of his voice and into the inflections and certain points, the pauses, the things that he's not saying, right? And that's the power that comes with that sound, because you can say anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can say anything, but what does it mean?
This is good.
Did you have fun, Kim?
Yeah, this is good.
We'll have to have you on for a regular episode. So Melissa and Ruben have both been guests on the podcast before, and we don't normally talk about music, but we wanted to have a roundtable because we thought it was a neat idea to where we can talk about everything that we've been talking about through all whatever 14 or so 15 episodes that we've had to date, with the community, with what's going on in the world, how we approach situations, and then break it down through music. So we'll probably have another one of these roundtables in another dozen or so episodes about a different topic. Yeah. So Melissa, is there any sort of social media or anything that you want anybody following you on?
If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Greers Latin, GreersLatin. I share all kinds of stuff, mostly about my students. So if you want to feel, if you want your hope in the future of humanity restored, I have great students, and I like to share what they do a lot. So follow me there, and yeah, that's about it.
All right, where can we find you at, Kim?
On Twitter, I got two different names. I got two different names. All right, one's for Twitter, one's for Instagram. For Twitter, it's _Kim KYM with _Y, Kim with a Y. So yeah, that's my Twitter, and then my Instagram is Sinfonian Drums. Yeah. So SINFNIAN drums with a Z.
All right.
Drums. Yeah. So yeah, just follow me on IG and Twitter. Y'all have a good day.
All right. Where can we find you at, Ruben?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Sounds by Ru. That's SOUNDSBYREU. Yep. And I post stuff about random mixes I'm going through and stuff like that. So follow me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. This has been a great roundtable. Being our first roundtable, I thought we covered a lot of subjects and also got to dive deep into some things. So thank you all for your participation, and we'll catch you on the next episode of No Universal Answers to the Universe.
No Universal Answers to the Universe is an interview series by Taylor Hall and Kenneth Gibbons, which releases on YouTube and all podcast platforms every Monday. If you have any questions or would be interested in being a guest on the show, please contact us at nouniversalanswers@gmail.com or via our Instagram page at no_universal_answers. Thank you for listening and have a great night.